Because it's Earth Day today, I thought that I would pull some books off my bookshelf to run you through some ideas of books on that theme. So whether it be books that appreciate the living world, whether it's books that how we can interact with it and grow food in a more sustainable way, for example, or whether it's ways that we can actually change the world. So when we come out of this coronavirus situation, we've got a better world that we want to live in. But I've got a collection of books that I want to run through really quickly. I'm planning to do some more in detail book review videos over the coming weeks whilst we're in lockdown, but this is just like a really quick Earth Day run through of some things that you might want to read. Starting off with Greta Thunberg's Nobody is Too Small to Make a Difference. I've actually lent this out to my daughter, and so it's a really good starting point to think, yeah, okay, we can make a difference as that one person has, starting with really small. So I hope that's really inspiring. And in terms of wanting to change the world, although it's not on an eco theme, I really love Brene Brown, Braving the Wilderness, and that's about having the courage to take that first step really and get out there and do something that you really believe in. If you're interested in tree books, the best place to start is The Hidden Life of Trees, which is by Wellerburn, and loads of really fascinating facts about trees, but also how I think once you read it, you find that we've got a lot in common with trees, but also that you kind of, once you find out a bit about their superpowers, you can kind of relate to them a bit better. So that's really good. I love also Jonathan Drury's Around the World in 80 Trees, and that's kind of as it suggests, and that's going into individual tree species, their uses, just interesting facts about them from around the world. And if you want to get a bit more in depth, Colin Tudge's The Secret Life of Trees is quite a lot of depth all about trees, and you can see I've written all over it, making notes from it as well. So lots and lots of really good tree facts there. Other nature related books, I love any book by Richard Louv. Years ago when I was doing my forest school training, I read his book Last Child in the Woods, which is a real wake-up call about how disconnected children are from nature, but obviously all people. And this one is The Nature Principle. He talks about something called vitamin N, which we need to, that connection with nature. But I recommend anything by Richard Louv. It's I absolutely love this book. Human Restoration and the End of Nature Deficit Disorder. One of the books that is a relatively recent book is called Wilding by Isabella Tree, The Return of Nature to a British Farm. So although this is about her own farm and how they rewilded the farm in Sussex, it is incredibly inspirational about what people can do in terms of leaving spaces for nature, just trusting that nature can and will find a way to rejuvenate. And it's a really practical book as well about what exactly they did, and a really good story. But I think in the times of coronavirus, we can also see that we are kind of being a bit more hands-off with nature, and we are hearing a lot more bird song. We haven't got the noise pollution. We've got wild animals and farm animals wandering through streets. It's quite an eye-opener as to how quickly nature can bounce back. Things like not mowing verges, absolutely wonderful. So that is a brilliant book. That's probably my best read of last year. And there's a similar book which I didn't bring down, called Feral by George Monbiot, and that talks a lot about how our landscapes we think of as natural are not actually natural at all. They're pretty much all man-made in this country. There isn't anywhere that's untouched. So it's about, well, what are we actually restoring when we do conservation? What is it that we actually want to conserve? And having that forward-looking approach, trusting in nature, is a much more resilient and sensible way to go forward. But it isn't all hands off. Anything permaculture related, so there are loads and loads of permaculture books out there. Anything really that teaches you about the fact that it's a design system, so it isn't kind of prescriptive about what you need to do, and it's about having a core set of ethics, and also then using the principles from nature to design mainly agricultural gardens, growing systems, etc. And one of the in terms of growing, so growing in harmony with nature but in an incredibly productive way, one of my favourite books is Organic Gardening, The Natural No-Dig Way by Charles Dowding. And Charles is really, really generous with his information. So he's not only produced lots of books, but he puts loads and loads of free videos online. Steph Hafferty's doing really good no-dig videos as well at the moment. And so anything really about these kind of new gardening methods, well, it's not new because Charles has been doing it for decades, but new to a lot of people in terms of like anything like regenerative, keeping the soil microbes in the soil rather than digging and exposing and killing them all. And there's a lot of benefits in terms of productivity, less weeding, less digging, obviously. And we here at St Bride's, at my small holding, that's the methods that we use in terms of our food growing. There's also forest gardening books. I haven't brought one down with me, but Martin Crawford's Creating a Forest Garden was the Bible for creating our forest garden as well, and there are loads and loads of forest gardening books out there as well. In terms of what we can do right now to imagine a new future, so I think we've had our eyes opened up a little bit to kind of, oh yeah, I really like this quiet, I like this clean air, I like the fact that there isn't the traffic noise, the traffic pollution, people are caring for each other, doing loads and loads of really, really positive things. And we can see this enormous amount of altruism, which is obviously exemplified in our care workers and hospital staff who are making these huge sacrifices, not only risking their lives but living away from their families, all that kind of thing. And it's a real antidote to what we're usually told, is that we're all selfish, and you know we're all about what we can get out of life, and that clearly is not true at the moment. So some really, really good books about shifting thinking on that, and then looking forward how we might change things. I love Rob Hopkins' From What Is to What If, which is a power of imagination, and how we've lost the ability often to imagine a new future. And I think, like I said, we're glimpsing it at the moment. So this is a really important book in terms of the ideas of harnessing collective imaginations. And when you do so, you actually find that people want remarkably similar things. And so it then begs the question, well, you know, why haven't we got that? What can we do to bring those things to pass? And I think a lot of people are collectively imagining at the moment, or imagining in their own bedrooms or in their own houses. And the challenge really is to how to bring those people all together in whilst we're in this lockdown situation, to harness some of those ideas and bring them forward. I've been revisiting revisiting Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine, and she's also done I think some videos on YouTube about the relevance to today about this concept. And it's the idea that when there are big crises, that there are people out there who are actively trying to exploit the situation. And what they do is they look for ideas that are hanging around, usually, and you know, her focus is kind of neoliberal economic ideas, political ideas that have been around kind of post Second World War, and how they've got us in this terrible situation we're in at the moment. But what inspiration I take from it is that, you know, we've got a lot of really good ideas hanging around at the moment, and can we harness them? Can we bring those together so that when we do start to open up the lockdown, that we're you know, putting in place the systems that we want, rather than allowing the 1% to create an even worse world that benefits them and nobody else. And really we are at the final point where we can really make a big difference, and so it would be good to see the coronavirus situation as an opportunity, however awful it is in terms of deaths and the situation, to see that as an opportunity. So that's a really good book to revisit. And anything of Naomi Klein, she's done some climate change books as well, which are amazing. There's a book called Prosperity Without Growth by Tim Jackson, which is economics for a finite planet. When we're talking about coming out of this lockdown, it's important to realise that we don't have to be on this continuous growth trajectory, and one way of doing that is by measuring things differently. So instead of measuring gross domestic product, which is all about this sort of incessant growth that eats up resources and heats the planet, then we can measure other things as well, like well-being, and factor in the additional costs, like climate costs, like human costs, because all of these things are related. We're not just destroying the planet, we're also harming us as individual people as well, and we can see that there are different ways. And another economics book more recently is Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, which is a really good book. It is written for a mainstream audience. It is quite economicsy, but I think a number of these books really give us inspiration that there are alternatives out there, that we don't have to see this really narrow system. We don't have to have that really narrow system that we are fed, that is the only option. And it's not. There are loads and loads of people doing amazing things out there, doing incredible research and projects that are proving these things to be possible, like, you know, agricultural regenerative agriculture projects, transition projects, numerous local projects around the world that aren't getting nearly enough publicity, and they have been leading the way. So I hope on Earth Day then you are tempted to get some books that can show how we might live differently, how we might live more in harmony with the world that is our only home. And let me know if you've got any other books that you would recommend for me as well.